interesting. That was it.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to episode 248. We're going to have a little bit of a break, obviously, with the international break, but 250 is rapidly approaching, fellas. That's a pretty big milestone. So welcome. For the first time in what feels like a long time, all four of us are in attendance today. So Adam, Craig, Robin, how are we feeling? The Europa League is over. The final run-in is about 18 days away. Big long break now for the Albion. How's your Albion mojo post Roma and going into this international break?
Mojo. That's an interesting word for it. Well, I absolutely shat on the team last episode. Like, the vibe was bad. The vibes were poor, and deservedly so, right? But this was a bit of a redemption game. Like we saw a Brighton this week, despite the fact that we crashed out. We saw a Brighton this week that we hadn't seen in months. So that is a nice place to leave off and take a little break and then come back for this run in, get some recovery back in, and hopefully see that some of these out of form players come back in. I'm feeling better about things. I'm feeling more positive. What about you, Rob and Craig?
I mean, I'm pretty similar. I mean, obviously you kind of did the Roma away thing last week, but I kind of, even discounting that, I know we were like second or third favourites for the Europa League, right? But let's be honest, we probably weren't going to win it with Liverpool, Leverkusen there. So the Europa League was
Leverkusen nearly went out to a carrier bag.
I know. There were two goals down in both legs, which was quite remarkable.
What was it, 94th, 97th?
Yeah,
from
something
Patrick
like that.
Schick, something absurd. Yeah,
it's great. But yes, I mean, I think if we're going to sign up, like if we take it into the context of we probably weren't going to win the entire thing, right? We may as well go out on the glory of just basically only having been to quite nice European cities. Like, let's just draw a line under it and say we were quite lucky to get those cities. The run in, I'm with you, Adam. I think it was like De Zerbi said, he saw a load of Robertos on the pitch basically for the first time in a while. So I'm with you. I'm quite enthusiastic for the run in. The only annoying thing is that West Ham seem to have found a little bit of form at precisely the wrong time for us. But I don't know. I mean, I still think I don't think we'll finish sixth, but 7th, 8th, and 8th could be good enough for Europe, providing Man City or Liverpool win the FA Cup. So I still think that 7th or 8th spot is there for the taking.
I think it's for West Ham to do well as well, isn't it? The coefficient sort of swing in the favour of 8th place. So, but yeah, I agree with you guys. Like, it's it was always going to be tough, especially with the group that we got dealt as well. And I don't think really a lot of people gave us a lot of hope either. So, yeah, did really well. It's a shame for that first leg to go the way it did, but it's a decent European run for what is our first time, right? And we can't say that we didn't try. So yeah, and the performance of Thursday as well just leaves me optimistic. I know we've got 2 weeks in between the next fixture, and it's going to be a really hard run in. We said last week it's literally the hardest run in of any team in the league. But you go and beat Roma, irrespective of the aggregate. You play well, you win the game. There's some level of redemption there, and you just carry that through. So a lot more optimistic than I thought I was going to be, which is nice.
I think all importantly, we got a win too, right? And a clean sheet, which we understand that Roma weren't exactly going all out to get a result here. They were quite happy to sit on the ball and not do anything at all. But the fact that we were able, we do, and we still scored a goal. And it was absolute worldie as well. And I know that Adam will roll his eyes at this, but really, we should have had 3 if Danny Welbeck had any kind of finishing ability beyond absolute screamers.
Well, we should have had 6 across the tie if Danny Welbeck had any sort of finishing ability as well. I mean, he missed 3. I mean, I keep banging about. You go back.
I should also be retired and multi-millionaire, but here we are.
Yeah,
set
in. He hates it.
Reality is. I don't like hypothetical. It's just hypothetical, isn't it? Yeah, if we were better at football, we'd have won. Yeah, of course we would have.
It's not even being better at football. There was 2 superb chances for Welbeck in that second half. That brilliant cross from Fatty was about the only good thing he's done all year.
You're probably triggering him.
I don't know how Welbeck's head didn't get on the end of that.
I've said my piece on Ansu Fati.
That's it.
Yeah.
But I mean,
baffling.
yeah. I mean, I suppose the good thing is that we haven't lost at home since what, Athens?
Which
In
is
the first
crazy
game,
considering the
which is
last
like
couple of
15,
years.
was it like 15 games or something since we lost? It's like 12. It's definitely like 12, 15 games or something since we lost at home.
Why has that change happened? Because was it last year or the year before where we were the opposite of this? Our away form was stellar and the home form was a disaster.
Well, under Potter, we went near enough an entire calendar year without winning at home.
Right, yeah. Why is that?
even, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Potter also even instigate changes to our preparation to mirror our
Yeah,
away
to
days?
basically, yeah, because
It
yeah,
was
effectively it's
that
going to
bad.
stay in a hotel or whatever to make it seem like you're not there. And the problem with that is you rock up and you go, yeah, it still looks like the same stadium as our home ground. So
Well, they've had one night of the jury's in by the station, and like you think
Yeah.
they're going to pull out a 5-star
That's it.
game. Yeah, come on.
but it is curious. I don't know what it is about it. I suppose potentially, we had so many good results at home last year, particularly in the latter stages, that it builds that momentum, doesn't it? I mean, we have had some lucky ones, relatively speaking, haven't we? So I mean, but it's still, it's what you want for the run-in when we've still got what to play: Man United at home, Villa at home, Man City at home, probably someone else at home who I'm missing out from up there.
Arsenal
at home,
and Chelsea.
So-
I guess, but they're a bottom table side right now.
So, yeah, I mean, when you've got that, it is to to hang on to the fact that we can grind out these results at home.
I mean, let's talk about the 1-0 win because it's worth covering at least a little bit, right? Because I think that we talked a lot about the mentality in the midweek game of what we wanted to see. And De Zerbi came out and said exactly what I think it was you said, Robin, like that he had some Robertos in the side that he's not seen for a while. Like, Craig, do you think that part of this improvement that we continue to see is something as basic as going back to a goddamn back four?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think we've been saying that for so long. We said last week he's quite stubborn with this back three, and I think the mentality is that you try and familiarize the team with it so that you can resort to it if you need to. But you saw a team on Thursday that you wanted to see out there with the formation that actually suits and benefits the individuals playing within that system. So just really nice to see. And you could tell the difference immediately. I think it's probably one of the key reasons we actually did quite well, alongside just the pressure being off too. There's no way that we were going to, well, there's a very slim chance, I think a few people believed, but, trying to overturn a 4-0 deficit against an Italian team is like borderline impossible. So having that pressure off, having a system that actually suits the players playing in it, and there's no wonder that immediately you start playing better.
We've got to bring it up, I suppose, but you also had Bart Verbruggen in goal, didn't you?
Yeah.
So that it didn't have a ton to do. I think it's interesting, right? The team had to put in a good performance in this game, as you say, Craig. Like the stars are a little bit aligned here, where like if you didn't come out and at least do something fairly impressive, Roma are holding on to a 4-goal lead. Their two best players can't play. All you've got to do is not sort of embarrass yourself. You don't get early on pressure. You get to be comfortable on the ball. You've got home fan support. That takes the pressure off of some of the players that have been under the gun a little bit. So Estupinian, for example, can play the style of game he wants to play and push up a little bit more. You've got Adam Lallana in the mix as well. He brings that experience and a level of sort of connectivity between the defense and the forward line. So like, you'd hope we were able to do that, but there's difference between hoping and then actually doing it. And this was a team that was playing like a team we had not seen. We just haven't seen this for so long at this point. Confidence. We created 21. There were 21 shots. Now, yes, 5 were on target. We've seen that problem before, haven't we? But 21 shots. Like we haven't been doing that a lot lately. We've not been doing that a lot lately, and that's what we want to see more of.
I mean, the clean sheet is a little bit fortuitous because that overhead kick, right? I mean, if a Brighton player scores that and that gets disallowed, I'd be furious.
You see them disallowed all the time, though, rightfully or wrongly.
Really
a lot of those, unless you are hitting an overhead kick clean as possible with no one really around you, I feel like you're seeing it a lot. Like, and it sucks because a lot of them are legitimate goals. But at the end of the day, their third goal in Rome was offside. So like, let's just cancel that out and leave it at 4-1, right? Like, that's probably a reflective result as opposed to 5-1 or 4-2, whatever. Like, it is what it is. They got a bit of luck in Olympica, and they got a bit of bad luck at the Amex. Like, it doesn't change the result really. But yeah, I mean, I think the Verbruggen stuff, we've talked about it to death. We really have now. And I think that what we'll do is we'll save it to the end of the season where stats are a lot easier to get and I don't have to manually do them in my head, and I can just press a button and someone's already done it for me. But I will, at our post-season review, we'll make sure we put together a strength of schedule for both Verbruggen and Steele to see what kind of tier or team on average they were started against. I think that would be really interesting to look at come end of season. No point doing it now. One, there's 10 games to go against a shit ton of big teams. And two, those teams could finish absolutely anywhere between now and the end of the season. So come the end of the season, we're going to give our definitive Steele versus Bart decision. And it's going to be undebatable, unarguable, factual perfection. And we'll know from then on that De Zerbi has got to start a goalkeeper for next year. By hook or by crook.
Imagine if it is Steele that is statistically better.
Stats don't lie. If the stats are true, then we'll make sure we send it to De Zerbi. We'll send it in a post if necessary, via cassette tape if he has to, like whatever it is. Send him vinyl episode. Like, we'll make sure he listens to it and gets his goalkeeper picked.
He feels like a mini disc kind of guy to me. I can see him crack out a mini disc player.
We've got two keepers in the championship now as well. In Rushworth and Beadle, so
yeah,
we're not void of any sort of different goalkeepers or anything like that. But
yeah, Beadle's getting some good practice at picking the ball out of the back of the net at the moment.
Yeah, especially yesterday.
Not ideal, but I think Rushworth is. Although I've seen a lot of things like Swansea seem to think he's going to be there again next season. There's quite a lot of talk about that. So whether it's another loan deal, I can't imagine we'd sell him. Unless they've decided Jason Steele just going to be the number one for like the next decade. We just don't need anybody else.
It's not great to have the same last name in Beadle as a guy famously with a very
for having one small hand.
Yeah, like you don't want to take after that. You got to have. You want two safe hands, don't you?
I do have one last question for you about the goalkeeper situation. Two questions, really. One, if you answer yes to one, then two doesn't matter. So, one, do you think the goalkeeper swapping routine of this season is sustainable for next season and something we'll see next season? If the answer is no, do you think that it would be best to move Steele on, assuming it's Bart who gets that number 1 point? Or do you think that it will be fine leaving him as the number 2? Like, we see this in sports everywhere, right? Like backups, quarterbacks, backup, everything really. Like, it's always a bit dodgy in those skill positions, whether you keep them or whether you don't. R.I.P. Justin Fields, off to the Steelers, by the way.
Don't stop.
But I'm so happy to see him gone, honestly. But do you think that they talk a good game, right? And they seem to be very close. Like, the first thing they do is celebrate with each other when things go well. Do you foresee that happening next season if Steele is essentially relegated to a cup goalkeeper? Or do you think that we have to move him on for his sake to get game time at somewhere else to be their number 1? And then we bring in one of those championship goalkeepers as number 2. What are your thoughts on what that goalkeeper situation looks like?
I think if Steele is 10 years younger, then it's more of a debate. In answer to the first question, I don't think it is sustainable to keep doing it. One, because there's probably a very good reason why basically no other football team in the world does it. Firstly. And secondly, we would keep doing it. Let's say if it had resulted in us finishing in the top 4, right? Because De Zerbi had just got it exactly right with each keeper against the type of opposition we're playing. Fair enough. But it's not worked out that well. And, we've talked about the impact it can have on, who else you've got personnel wise, formation wise, etc. So I don't think it's sustainable. I don't think that Steele is going to be the type of guy to throw his toys out of the pram when it comes to this, because ultimately his first couple of years with us, potentially longer, he was basically doing this role.
Longer.
So he's
he
coming
joined in 2018. He's been at the club for a long time.
Yeah, so his first 3-4 years, so 4 years potentially he was doing that. I say he's 34, 33, 34.
33. He'll be 34 in August.
So I can't see him necessarily wanting to jump ship if he's just going to if he's going to be the cup goalkeeper. Because if you go, okay, fine, he decides, right, I'm going to go and get some games, right? I want to go and do something else. In the nicest way, I can't see him being first choice keeper at another Premier League club.
No, there's no way.
Correct me if so. So therefore, he's going, right. If I want to go and play regularly again, you've then got to go. I'm either dropping down a division, or he's going off to like the MLS or something.
And by the way, this is also a guy now that has plied his trade in a sweeper keeper playmaker position, which is not exactly championship football for the most part. So like he's carved himself a bit of a niche now. And I personally, I don't think he's going anywhere, right? He was given a contract extension in November of last year. So 4 months ago, and his contract runs until the end of June 2026. So we've got him for another little while.
2 and a bit years, 2 seasons.
Yeah. Verbruggen's the guy. As simple as that. Yeah. That's just it. Now, I think this season was the season where De Zerbi wanted to be careful, bet him in, just like he's been doing with quite a lot of players. And we talked about Baleba at length. It's Verbruggen's job next year. And if it isn't, I've got a very, very, very large amount of questions for Roberto De Zerbi, quite honestly.
Depends who the manager is, though, right?
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, I mean, I think objectively, I know you don't want to talk about the stats wholly now, Josh, but if you look at them as they are now, like it's not a close race across the metrics at the moment.
The reason I don't want to talk about it too much is because it might be a lot closer in 10 games time when Bart's shipped 58 goals from Liverpool, Man City and Arsenal.
We'll be begging for Steele at the end of the season.
Yeah.
Come on, Bart's not the guy.
Yeah, I don't see, I mean, given the fact that the reason why, one of the seeming reasons why Sanchez was shipped out was because he basically wasn't prepared to do what Jason Steele had done for 4 years and basically just waited for his chance. So I'd find it very surprising if Steele basically then went full Sanchez and did exactly the same thing that he was pissed off that Sanchez had done in the first place. It just doesn't seems wildly out of character. So yeah, I'm with Adam. It's clearly Verbruggen for me. And, Steele, if you're going to have a backup, you want someone to be an experienced backup. You want someone to have been there and done it, relatively speaking, who knows the club, is settled. So I see Steele as the perfect backup, really.
And he probably would be for the dressing room as well, right? Like he's just one of those guys that you want to keep around. It'll come down to what probably Jason Steele wants, right? If he's not happy with that level and only starting the cup games or being there when Bart gets injured, then great. But if he's not up to that and he thinks, right, I'm 34, I've got a couple of good years left in me, like I want to play regularly and as high up as I can, you can't really begrudge him for that either. So it also depends on what his best interest is as well. And the trade-off of that. But I think we're all in agreement that it's Bart and it has to be. I think, Adam, you're right. This is a transition season. And I think Roberto's been a bit stubborn in keeping this rotation going. But if it's not solidified next year, then we're just going to continue having the same problem. So we'll see. I do think he stays, but it just depends entirely on what he wants for the next couple of years of his career.
Good chat, everybody. Well played. Very diplomatic. But all right, so Roma. I tell you one thing I found about Roma: game management. Not their best forte, was it? They came in with a 4-0 lead. You would have thought it was just a 2. Their yellow cards, they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 by the end of the game. Probably could have had about 9 with some of the ones that will be waved away. What did you make of the way they set up? Because I couldn't believe my eyes when their goalkeeper was getting booked for time wasting on 46 minutes. I feel like
never seen
they
that.
were horribly set up from the word go, and obviously it worked out fine for them because they got away with it. But with a slightly more flamboyant ref, they're down to 10 men before halftime with a couple.
Yeah,
of
comfortably. I mean, I know Craig said the chance of turning around a 4-goal deficit against an Italian team is obviously very unusual. Having said that, I thought they were pretty nervy. I mean, even the last 10, 15 minutes where we still needed 3 goals and Igor shoots from about 1,000 yards out, seemingly. Like, they look panicked. Like, I still genuinely think, I think if we're 2-0 up at half time, I think there's an awful lot of panic. They were quite un-Italian in that respect. I mean, they were all of the gamesmanship that comes along with it, but solidity comes back to, if you've got Evan Ferguson on form who can actually finish, or the elephant in the room, Dennis Undav, who can actually finish.
Oh God, we're back there. We're back there, aren't we?
Yeah. No, but I'm saying that my point is that they, even with a 4-0 lead, you'd have thought that you could basically just come there and just park the bus and just look quite calm because you've got a 4-0 lead. But they didn't look that confident to defend it.
No, they didn't. I think this is a different side from the Mourinho side, isn't it? If it was the Mourinho side, I mean, I don't know, like probably not even worth bloody watching the game. Like they would have just sat there for the whole time. We would never have scored. It would have been horrendous. This De Rossi's team's different, right? It plays like De Rossi.
Yeah,
a little bit.
I mean, I said to Josh in Rome, which now looks just completely ridiculous. I was like, I'm so glad we're not playing Mourinho's Roma, because basically, as you said, Adam, they'd shit us out 1-0 over 2 legs.
Yeah.
And I was like, the fact that we're playing De Rossi's much more open team, I think gives us a much better chance, which shows you why I'm not a pundit on Sky Sports.
Well, technically, I guess it did give us a better chance at one end of the pitch. The other was less fortunate for us. But yeah, it was weird. There was some really dodgy tackles flying in. But look, it's done now. I think I'm more from that game. I think we have to take away from the fact that this was. Let's look back on this European run, and basically we finished top of a very competitive group. In a weird scenario, this is horrible to try and think of it this way. It would have been better to be bloody Marseille, wouldn't it? After all that, but you can't recreate history. But we've got to be proud of that. We've come out. We've won a game. We've won a game against Roma. We've beaten Marseille. We've beaten Ajax. This has been fun. This has been the heights the club has never reached. And while we would have loved to have not absolutely shat the bed in Rome, it's done, and we move on. And if we can, for me, if we can now take this semi-momentum that we've sort of seen here and start to look towards finishing, for me, if we finish anywhere 8th or above, and I'll include 8th in that completely, I'm ecstatic with that. I think that's a great end to the season, regardless if that means Europe or not. I think that's a great recovery that we've had with a very, very, very difficult schedule with a small squad, and that allows us to build in summer.
I mean, you say that. I thought it was interesting the way people are criticising De Zerbi, and we have sometimes before, about being slightly more naive, his attacking threat just being all in and stuff. But we've exceeded West Ham's 40-point total from last season. They won the Conference League, obviously, last year. They had a squad that was a lot more expensive than ours. They spent 150 million quid that summer, and we've already exceeded their points total. Like, first seasons in Europe are brutal. And we are still talking about the possibility of 8th place. Like that doesn't happen often. And then when you look at that quarterfinal rather, like AC Milan against Roma, Liverpool against Atalanta, Bayer Leverkusen against West Ham, and Benfica versus Marseille. Like, Craig, 5-6 of those teams could be a Champions League quarterfinal, couldn't they?
Huge teams. Yeah. And it goes back to Adam's point, is that you go and beat Marseille, you go and beat Ajax, you beat Athens, you beat Roma. Like, those are teams that even 2 years ago, you're thinking that's ridiculous, that you could go and beat those 4 teams in the same season and get to the last 16 of Europe while still being in for a shot for Europe this season. So it's really good. And I think I think people were disappointed about, again, the way that we shat the bed in Roma and everything like that. Like that was a bad result. But I think in a while, people are going to look back on this run very fondly because, like you said, we haven't gone to the, I guess, the detriment of domestic with like West Ham did last year. You've been able to maintain some level, and again, performances haven't been great, right? I don't think we've been anywhere near our best, but we saw glimpses of it on Thursday. But still being able to get results and still be on 42 points or so, and still be in for a chance for another European slot, whilst hitting the 16, whilst relatively competing in the domestic cups with this squad that's been completely hindered by injury, is something that's commendable.
By the way, Josh, how big is it that we, as of time of recording here, the West Ham Villa game just ended and it ended 1-1. So we've got a game on West Ham who are 2 points clear of us, but we've got 10 net positive on the goal difference against them. How important is it that West Ham now continue in Europe in that Conference League? They've got to contend with that stress and pressure, and we've now just got clear air to focus on the Premier League. Do you think that could be potentially decisive in how this all plays out?
Yeah, short term, I think so. Because, I mean, they've got Bayer Leverkusen twice. It's not like they've got an easier team. Like, it's not like they have a Marseille, right? Like, they are going to be ran ragged for 2 football games. And they're probably not going to win it, right? Like, I can't see many scenarios where Moyes-Ball beats Bayer Leverkusen, especially if Carrier-Bag couldn't. Like, and they are like Moyes-Ball on steroids, right? Like, they're built, designed, and evolved to be the perfect like specimen to do that, and they couldn't beat them. So I mean, when you look at West Ham's running, like they have not got an easy set of games either. Newcastle, Tottenham, Wolves, Bayer, Fulham, who not a lot of people are talking about, but are well in form after absolutely dicking Spurs, makes that 3-0 loss look not so bad, doesn't it? And then again, Bayer Leverkusen again, Palace, Liverpool, Chelsea, Luton, Man City. So, they've got 9 games left, and 5-6 of them are against very good sides. And then, like you say, they've got another 2 more between now then and now with Bayer Leverkusen as the team to play. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be brutal. I think it will be a big difference maker. I think, similar for teams slightly above them as well. Like you've got Villa still competing in the Conference League. How much is that going to take out of them for their top 4 run? Are we going to be able to get up to 8 places in Europe? Like it seems to be almost a lock, doesn't it?
No one wants 4th in this league either, do they? No one wants 4th in this. Like Villa have completely gone away. Spurs, who knows what they're doing? Man United, a car crash, and then you're suddenly at West Ham again. Like it's a weird situation. Like these European places. Not only do we have the unknown of how many there are bloody going to be, but it's like what teams are even going to bother? Like it's weird, especially that West Ham's next game I think is Newcastle, right? Which is great for us because they're going to take points off of one another. But we're only 5 points off of Man United. Not to get too ahead of ourselves, you can look at it the other way, right, and say, well, we're only 4 points off of being in 12th. So it's going to be a proper tricky few games for us. There's 2 months left in the season from this point. There's 2 months left. It's going to be nerve-wracking to see how this ends up.
And we'll have a big part to play in just about everything for the rest of this season because we've got every big team possible. And then we've also got Burnley as well, which is going to be a nice one to just probably cement them relegated at that point. It could end up relegating them mathematically.
We will beat City and lose to Burnley away. Tell me that's not going to be there's no way we beat Burnley away. I'm just telling you, there's no way.
6 points at home to Arsenal and City and 0 points away to Bournemouth and Burnley.
I think we lose both. Ah, dear.
I mean, I think the campaign has been superb, right? Like AC Milan would have been next up. Like, what a gauntlet! Like that would have been like, and inevitably we'll be looking at the winner of that and just looking ahead, right? Like because right now you've got Marseille, Athens, and Ajax in your group. You've got 2 legs of Roma, 2 legs of AC Milan. Like inevitably it's going to be a brutal team in a semi-final. Inevitably a final is going to be a very big side as well. Like is there a more difficult Europa League campaign than that from the group stage onwards for any other team in there? Like, not really. Like,
No.
The fact that we got as far as we did and were as good as we were, I think, is awesome. And
I
like
think
Mikey said in the chat, the better the English teams do in Europe at this point, the better for us too, as it may give us an extra league spot, which would take us all the way down to 8th place, getting a European spot in the Conference League. Frankly,
I think
it couldn't hurt, could it?
no. But I think from a fan's perspective as well, like, you know, if this is never going to happen again, getting to Europe, which, you know, it might not happen for a long time, right? It may not. From a fan's perspective, to have got the chance to go to 4 legitimate, I mean, I'm going to say AK Athens, from their experience of being in Europe and, you know, being a capital city, 4 pretty heavyweight teams, right, in European history. And what, Marseille have won the European Cup multiple times. Roma seemingly have just been in Europe every season, got to the final of Europa League last season. And to go to 4 very, very nice, proper European cities. I know, Josh, we talked about Wigan fans that one year when they got to Europe and they got like Vulgaram or whatever, and they're just having to traipse off to like the middle of Europe somewhere. Like, it's kind of fair. I know qualifying in the first place was kind of fairy tale stuff, right? When you consider, well, virtually our entire history. But to then add on the fact that you then get trips to Marseille, Amsterdam, Athens, and Rome is just bonkers, isn't it? So, I mean, if it doesn't happen again for ages, it's just it's a proper fairy tale.
I mean,
and you know, and the last thing I go, and the fact that I know we personally encountered some Albion fans who were just a bit dickheadish at the end of the Roma game, but largely having done 3 of the 4 away games, the support we had was phenomenal across those games. I mean, it's no mean feat to go, you know, having never done it, you know, to go and take 3,500 to Marseille, 3,500 to Rome, 1,500 to Athens, 3,000 to Amsterdam. Like, and the support was brilliant. So the fact that the fans got that chance to go, I know we always said it's like, without getting too kind of stereotypical about it, you go, probably 15 years ago, if we'd have said we wanted 1 season in the Premier League, right, you tick that off the list and you get to the Premier League and go, this is nuts, right? And then pretty soon you have become assimilated to the Premier League and you go, wouldn't it be mad if we had 1 season in Europe? And you go, not going to happen. But then it sort of does. It just ticks off that fairy tale thing. I don't think it could have gone any better, really.
Let's look at Wigan Athletics' campaign in the Europa League, just for a bit of perspective here as well. 2013-14 season, so 10 years ago, right? Literally 10 years ago to the season. Their group stage, and they didn't get through past the group stage. They finished bottom on 5 points, 1 win, 2 draws, and 3 losses. They played Rubin Kazan of Russia, Maribor of Slovenia, and Zultwagen of Belgium. Not only is that a dismal group, but like, Craig, does that not speak to the significant strengthening of teams within Europe as well? Like, the quality of teams is raising itself massively when you look at that group compared to what we've got 10 years from now.
Massively, yeah. And even when you look at the last 8 of the Champions League, right? You look at those 8 teams, it's a ridiculous 8 that you're seeing. And you saw it in the Europa League as well. Like, hell, even some of the ones in the Conference League, right? You've got the last 8 there, and you've got some teams like Fiorentina and stuff that were, you know, in the final of it and are there again. Like, some established teams that are making this. And it's it's a small feat that you get to that level and you're saying, right, oh, we were 1 result away from going to the San Siro. Like, that's insane to me, and probably will be for a while. So the standard is very, very high. And I think, you know, because we're in the Premier League, we see it week in, week out, but these European teams are also doing really good things. And some of them are more well suited to knockout football as well. I think, you know, you can see your Romas doing average in Serie A, but you don't want to play them in a knockout competition because they're actually quite good in that respect. So yeah, it's a really good campaign from us. I think we'll continue to say that, and we'll probably remember it more fondly as time goes on. But we had the toughest run in probably you could ask for, right? There was a whole group of death nonsense, and then going straight into Roma. Like it was a tough gauntlet, as we said.
I'll be the arsehole then, despite the fact that I do agree with you. But as referenced earlier, we were what, third or fourth favourites to win the whole thing before it started. We were expected to do better than we did. We were expected to do better.
Do you think that though, realistically, do you think that is English bookies and English bettors preferring English?
Yeah, they're trying to.
It's the same reason
in, aren't they?
Like it's always that way, don't you think? Like there's always, and I don't mean that. Like I feel like if we qualified for the Conference League this year, we would be favourite again, despite having a much worse campaign this year than last year. We'd be one of the top 2 or 3 favourites to get. It feels like that's just how it always is. Like it feels just when it comes to English bookies with English teams, there's always a little bit of bias involved. Do you not find that to be the case?
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, but this isn't just, it wasn't just exclusively English bookmakers though. I think if you tried to get the odds even in the US and whatever, similar type of story. This is, it's based on the body of work that we saw last year and what De Zerbi was able to do, and then the form of teams like obviously Roma have switched managers in this time, like that type of thing. Bayer Leverkusen have gone from strength to strength. People weren't talking about Leverkusen in quite the same way at the start of this campaign than they are now, where it's like, hold on, Xabi Alonso's side hasn't bloody lost in what, how many Bundesliga games at this point? Like all of them? I can't remember. So sure, things, all of them. So things change, right? But I think there was always, I agree, right? It was always a bit of a leap to think that we were the third or fourth best, chance to win the competition, right? But that were the odds they were taking. And I think the biggest thing here, right, is the fact that the injuries came at a bad time for us. And the form fell away, and players we expected to be incredible for us. This was, these odds were put out at a time when we just signed Ansu Fati, I would imagine, right? Like the vibes were high. And unfortunately, the sort of reality set in. So I agree, right? Amazing experience for us to go through this campaign. I think we've done ourselves proud, barring one performance in Rome. Maybe you could argue the first game against Athens. But there's more to come here, and I think if we seal this 8th place and it does open up a Conference League position, you want more, right? You want more next time around. Like this is not the club that was supported 15 years ago. This is the club that is on the world stage now, and it is capable. It's shown it's capable of performing at the highest level. This club, this team, this side, when fit, can beat that Roma team, home and away. We know that. We've seen these performances. And I think that's the only bittersweet bit you have with this, right? Is that what could have been.
I'll give you some.
Are you saying that if we were better at football, we might have won the game?
If we were better at football, we might have won the game. There you go. Exactly.
I would just say one more thing, and I would love you to look in the US now, just because you brought that up. But over 26 bookmakers in the United Kingdom and Ireland, England are unanimous favourites to win Euro 2024. That's the only thing about the bias coming in from these bookies, because that obviously isn't the case with France, Germany, Spain in there. Like, do you really consider England to be favourites to win the Euros?
Yes, I actually do. Well, not if Southgate was fired.
Well, I mean, if Welbeck has scored a hat-trick.
Well, okay. But think about, just to get people a little bit excited, I don't know how much have you thought about this England team lately, because the England front line is Harry Kane, who is the most informed striker in world football currently. You've got Jude Bellingham playing behind, who is the most informed potential player in football in its entirety. Phil Foden, who's playing completely out of his mind, and Saka, who's also had an incredible season. Of course, we're not going to actually attack. We'll just sit back and rely on fucking John Stones and Harry Maguire. But that side hypothetically is capable of going all the way. Absolutely. But I get your point.
To think about it too much, simply because while you're absolutely correct, I feel like half of those players won't even start. we will be starting Raheem Sterling instead.
Jordan Henderson.
Did you see his free kick earlier? If you watched that game, against
Dude,
Leicester?
he had a rough game, didn't he?
It went to the fucking stratosphere. Excuse my French. It was unbelievable. He's so bad.
But
He
yeah,
got booed, I think.
he did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he did. He did. The only
Oh,
other thing on
God.
odds is that we were the third or fourth favourite before the tournament started. When the Champions League clubs dropped into it, we then did go down to like 7th or 8th favourite or something. It's still to your point that probably that shows you quarter final is probably about where we should have got to. But yeah, we did drop further down when some of the
Well, we were
Champions
favoured
League
over
dropout.
Roma. Let's face it, we were favoured
yeah,
over
no, we
Roma.
were. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that like that Roma tie should have been a 50, like it was a 50-50 game, and it's just unfortunate that we just forgot how to defend
But
for 90 minutes.
last point on this, but I just want to make this point, right? Like, tell me in all honesty, the people listening and you guys, right now, how many of these Roma players do you know existed for the game? Sardar Azmoun, Tommaso Baldanzi, Eduardo Bove, Brian Cristante, Zeki Schelik, Gianluca Mancini, Mile Svilar, Nicola Zaweski. And I'll give you Spinazzola, Pellegrini, and Ndicka, as I would imagine you've heard of those three. Maximum 5?
Probably.
I've heard of a couple of them, but like I blame Football Manager for knowing.
Yeah, so do I. For that.
I know over half that squad.
These aren't
Football Manager really
quarter-final European Cup competition players. Like, obviously Lukaku and Dybala injured, Smalling's injured, like a bunch of good injured players. But like, we should be beating that team.
But you look at what the two moments that basically decided the first leg, right? Like we can't play an offside trap, and Dybala scores. Lewis Dunk forgets that you can just put the ball out, and Lukaku basically pushes him into the Colosseum and then scores. So those two, they're big name players, take the wind out of us in the first 45 minutes.
Yeah. Just those.
But I take your point. I mean, I looked at it and I did think overall, like if you look at the entirety of the squad, and it sounds mental now to say it, I still think when everyone's fit, we've probably got a better overall squad than them. But
yeah, almost like I'd probably give us better odds to beat them. Yeah.
But actually, those two, they're big players, annoyingly. Well, it's not even that surprising because Lukaku just, he's in that list of centre-backs that Lewis Dunk just has a complete meltdown against.
Well, forward, yeah. He probably could play centre-back, to be fair.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's very frustrating. And, to get into your favourite hypotheticals, if Matoma and João Pedro are fit, then, I think we probably comfortably win that
I think we win the tie with Matoma and João Pedro, right?
Absolutely.
I
think
João Pedro maybe
does.
just João Pedro with his form in Europe. That killed us. João Pedro.
I was gonna, before we started, I was thinking of things we could talk about, and one of them was like Europa League MVP for the Albion, and that was a waste of time, right? Like Pedro, I'm assuming, is our unanimous winner of that option. Like, I don't think we've ever had such a influential player come onto the scene.
Who's the anti-MVP though?
Can I put that? I know this is a bit recency bias, but this wasn't the only game. Lewis Dunk did not have a good campaign.
Not in Europe.
No, not in Europe.
The only remarkable moment was that he may have. I can't remember if he caused a mistake, but there was the moment in the Marseille game where we were 2-0 down. I think we were either 2-0 or 2-1 down, and he produced just a ludicrous block when their striker was through 1-on-1. I don't know whether he made the mistake to create the chance in the first place, but that block, like if that goes in, like that's lights out.
He's always good for a block, isn't he? It's been a weird difference between form in the league and Europa in terms of our player. Like Gilmour has been, well, especially early in the year, Gilmour was one of our best players. He's fallen off quite heavily. I don't think it was particularly impressive in Europe. I think the only player that has been truly consistently fantastic, and you could argue maybe there's two of them, for me, is Van Hecke. And then you'd lob Pascal Gross in there, wouldn't you? But even he had a couple of blips. But yeah.
It's weird how they react. Yeah, it's just like it's a different type of competition, isn't it? Like you're playing against teams that play very differently. I don't know. I think a couple of times they got a bit rabbit in the headlights around what the game meant, and I guess the implications of playing in Europe. I mean, it's most of the guys' first time playing in Europe, right? So every right to be nervous and under the lights and open to scrutiny at a different stage, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, it's the first time playing in that competition, right? And knockout football is very different. The game's the same, but it somehow just doesn't translate. So I think they did well. I think you're right. Consistency-wise, Van Hecke is a revelation this season in general, let alone just in Europe, but just across the whole season. And Pascal Gross has just missed the clutch as always. But I agree with you both, right? I think if you have two natural wingers in a Dinger and Matoma on the pitch, and you have João Pedro up front, this team can beat probably any team on its day. But you take João Pedro away, who was incredible in Europe. You take Matoma away, which frees up a Dinger on the other side, stops the double up, and all of a sudden you look like a different team. So we
still concede 4 in Rome, right? Like, but that first leg ends 4-4. That's the difference.
Yeah, and
maybe
I think,
you do.
Well,
maybe
I think Matoma doesn't get the credit of the defensive work that he does too. Because I think
and he's a great outlet, isn't he?
I think him and Estepinian on the left side again is, we've talked about it a lot, but we just haven't seen it this year because of injuries, etc. But just the defensive abilities of Matoma on the left, and Dinger comes back on the right. He's not very good at defending, but it's coverage. I just think having two wingers means that they both don't get doubled up. And that's the issue that we saw with the Dinger just being closed down. But there you go. If we had all of our players fit, we could have won the game. It's all hypotheticals and lovely stuff like that.
I know I said I'd had my piece on it, but has Ansu Fati, like, because you talked about it's your fault, Craig, because you talked about our players that have had experience in like European competition. He's a guy that has experience in Europe, and he's been absolute crap in whatever position, cup, competition, doesn't matter what it's been. He's been at what point are we off the, like, do you just bench him, just not play him at this point? Like, what are we doing?
367 minutes of European football, 2 goals, 1 assist. It's not bad at all. Third highest rated player for the Albion on Who Scored and Sofa score during the Europa League.
I think.
Well, what game? What game?
He scored he scored those both 2 against Ajax. Both.
Well done.
Each game of the Ajax one.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. That's the stats don't lie.
No, I agree with you. I see where you're coming from, Adam, because obviously I think probably one of the 4 of us would have had a decent chance of scoring in either of those games. But the only thing I would say is the potential for that Ajax, like the fact that he got a very clinical goal in that Ajax away game quite early on, just set the tone for that being quite a routine win. That's the best I can get. That's the best I've got for you.
Has that been his best? That's been his only moment in an Albion show.
And a really good goal in the Ajax home game, like a really good finish. But in terms of sort of important moments, getting an early goal to bet, because that obviously Ajax were poor coming into that game. They weren't doing well in the league. Obviously, had a different manager, and those games like that, we've seen the Albion cock those sort of games up fairly comfortably quite often. So the fact that we could sort of quiet the crowd, I know it was a horrendous mistake. They basically, their 17-year-old centre back, channeled his inner Lewis Dunk and basically just passed the ball straight to our attack. But to actually just dispatch that goal, settle the nerves, it's that's about as good as I can paint it for you.
This is like when someone's got their lawyer defending them in court for like an absolute, like they're definitely murdered the person, and this is like the only this is the glove does not fit the hand type defense. Like, what he did score a decent goal against Ajax, so he was. I think
that's all I've got for you.
The bigger thing is I feel like he was signed as the player that would be able to push us over the top this year and do the things that we didn't think we'd be able to do, and really like compete in the league, get deep into the Europa League competition. And it's been a shame that he has been almost the opposite. I'd argue that it's arguably less impactful than Mahmoud Dahoud, which is an indictment.
It's not worked, right? Like, it's just not worked out as a move.
Such a talk sport inflammatory response.
It is.
I'm trying to get clicks, Josh. We don't even put this out. No clicks to come from it.
You're a thin Alan Brazil at this point.
I'll take it.
But obviously, I know
Alan
a few
Chile.
weeks ago, I was basically defending him, going, "There's still big moments that could happen, right?" Like I've kind of moved past that. Like the move hasn't worked out, and it probably isn't going to work out. I'm still where I was at the beginning, which is I still think it was a gamble worth taking as a move. Like if you're offered Ansu Fati on loan, right? Like it's,
you do it every single time in every universe.
Yeah. I mean, I have obviously, there's people on social media going, "Oh, it was a dumb move to make," like upsetting the rhythm of the squads, paying him that much compared to everybody else, blah 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 blah. But it's still like it's a move where everyone's taking that move, right?
It was the best transfer the club has ever made before he kicked a ball.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And it's just, I mean, it hasn't worked out. I think it is a classic. I think the injury came at just the wrong time, because before he got injured was the time where he was starting to produce the goals. He was working really hard. He was starting to work hard in defence. He just looked like he was settling in. And since he's come back, it's whether obviously there's a part of him that doesn't want to get injured again, because obviously he seems to get injured fairly regularly, so he's just looking a bit tentative. But he now has the look of someone who's obviously got to go back to Barcelona in the summer and effectively fight for his career. Because I'd imagine if you're a Barcelona fan or you're a Barcelona executive, the fact that you've been loaned out from Barcelona to Brighton and you're basically not tearing up trees for Brighton, and in fact, you can make an argument for when everyone's fit, he's not actually in the matchday squad.
I don't even know if there's much of
great.
an argument to make.
I mean, it's not great. I mean, it doesn't look great for him prospect-wise. So he's now obviously he's not taking on his man. He had that moment in the first leg where he just tried the second leg against Roma where he just tried to flick the ball and try and keep it in play, and it just looked a bit of a daft thing to do. And then when it doesn't come off, he just kind of shrugged his shoulders. It's like, what did you expect me to do? It's like, well, not try a fancy flick and just keep the ball in play would have probably been top of the list. So he's just got this. It's just he looks very different. He just looks at this point like he has also accepted that this hasn't worked out.
There's an important bunch of games to come, though, isn't there, Craig, Josh?
Yeah.
He can redeem himself.
Yeah, I think my lukewarm take or hot take for some people is that before the injury, he actually looked all right. I thought he brought something to the table and was a threat in some way. I don't think he was pulling up trees like the Barca sensation that you would expect, but I thought he was bedding in, adapting to the way that we played as a 19, 20-year-old and actually delivering some form of performance. I think he then gets injured. He's now completely paranoid about re-aggravating that injury and just looks the shell of the person that we're probably expecting. And that's where the recency bias comes in and saying that he's not bringing enough to this team. But I did think before that injury, I thought he was doing well. That Ajax game, a couple of goals in the Premier League. I thought this could be something, right? And it's a viable threat on one side, and gives Matoma and Adingra a break. It seemed nice. But you're right. There's 10 games to go, right? And if he shakes off this hypersensitivity of just trying not to get injured, then maybe we'll see something. I don't think it's all doom and gloom here. I think logistically, it was a great move. Like you said before it was kicked, this team can bring these type of players into the team and into this club and heighten their reputation or our reputation. And I still think there's something there. There has to be something there, right?
Do you think there's a chance we're not going to pay his £1 billion release clause now at the end of the season?
Yeah, I think it's probably the chance of
touch and go, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he is. I mean, you can make a case for saying he's about 12 months away from moving to the Saudi League, right? Like, if it doesn't work out, he's drifting towards that kind of thing.
I could see him at Real Sociedad or something like that, staying in Spain, but in those sort of realms. I don't think he's Saudi just yet, but we'll see. It's not $1 billion.
Maybe the biggest blessing will be, maybe this is incredibly harsh, but at the end of this season, depending on how it all plays out, or regardless, right, Ansu Fati and Adam Lallana drop off the wage bill. It frees up £250,000 a week of wages. And that's, you would expect we'd be able to spend £160,000 a week more effectively next year. You would think, right, Josh?
It's about the price of a pint in a Green King
I mean, it's
pub,
not just them two, right? I mean, it's not just them that are going to be dropping off either. Like, you've got a couple
No.
of others that could possibly be moving on as well, like for a lot of money.
I'd have thought Milner. I think you make a case for Milner potentially calling it a day at the end of the season. At this
I'll be
point.
honest, I forgot we had James Milner. Forgot he played for Brighton.
I know
Well,
he's what? I know he's not that many. He's only like 20 games shy of the overall record, isn't he? Like overall Premier League appearance record. But I can't see him making 20 appearances. I don't know. I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked to see him call it a day in the summer.
Let's talk about our besties at Green King, where football is more than a game. Just before we move on to the final run-in. The league season is entering that business end, and Green King Sport venues are showing every single televised Albion fixture, of which I suspect there are going to be quite a few, given the size of the teams we're playing in this final run-in. So with more than 900 sports hubs across the UK, it doesn't matter where you're based, you can catch every single minute of every Albion game that's on the TV. Football is best enjoyed with your mates. So if you're not at the ground this month, get a text in the group chat and head to your local Green King Sports venue to catch the game. Don't forget to download the Green King Sports app to enjoy exclusive competitions and discounts whenever there is a game on. Next game is away at Anfield. Doesn't get much harder than that with the form that they're in lately as well. We are hopeful to see a return of João Pedro. Doesn't mean much when you look at how different it is when they start competing on a football pitch, but he certainly looked sprightly at the end of the Roma game when he came on afterwards to clap the fans with the rest of the team. What are you hoping to see from this team with the final 10? Obviously, bearing in mind March, Mitoma and Hinshelwood are definitely out for the rest of the season. Obviously, we know we can write those off entirely. But for the most part, Gilmore will be back, of course. João Pedro should be back to at least sub-fitness, if not full fitness, based on the fact that they said they were being extremely careful with him. Watch and learn, Roy Hodgson. What are you hoping for in this final 10 games, bearing in mind, as we have said already, they're a brutal running. Manchester City, Liverpool, Brentford, Arsenal, Burnley, Chelsea, Bournemouth, Villa, Newcastle, and Manchester United. What are you hoping to see from this final 10? Do you truly think 7th place or possibly 8th place is a realistic target given the games we have? And what are you hoping to see from these final 10 as we look to finish off this campaign and essentially place ourselves as well as possible for the summer, and what we anticipate to be hopefully a bit of a bounce back season in terms of the brutality of our injuries and inconsistencies?
I mean, I'll flip it right in terms of, I think finishing 7th or 8th, I'm not expecting it. Like, I'm not going to be wildly disappointed if we don't finish 7th or 8th because it's such a brutal run-in. Like, it'll be a massive bonus if we do, but you look at those last 10 games and points-wise from those last 10 games, I'm probably expecting in the region of 15 points. Something like that. Which, whether that gets us, what does that take us to points-wise? What, late 50s, mid to late 50s?
Well, let's go through it. Quickly. Liverpool away.
None.
Nothing.
Nothing.
We're all agreed. Brentford away. You get a point from that?
I think
I'll
3.
take a point from that.
I think 3.
Craig?
I'll go for a point. I'm half empty at the moment.
I'll round it to we'll do a point. I'm going to go weird on this one. I think we beat Arsenal at home. I don't know why. Just give me a little gut feel for that.
Point.
Yeah, point.
I would have just said loss. I think that
We'll go with a point then. Burnley away.
3.
3.
Like, I know I joked about it earlier, but 3.
Well, I think you sort of have to get 3. Chelsea at home.
3.
3.
Fucking hell. All right. Bournemouth away.
1.
Yeah. I'm 1. Yeah.
Yeah.
Villa at home.
Probably none.
I think they're going to be battered and bruised at that point. I think we win.
Okay.
They've already fallen off a little bit.
They have.
Newcastle away, I think we get nothing from.
I don't. I mean, their season is fizzling out, right? They've got nothing to play. Like they've just got nothing in their corner at the moment. I think 1. I think it will be to be honest, if at the end of the season, if we're in that stage where basically neither of us are qualifying for Europe, right? If we're like 9th and 10th or 10th and 11th, right? I can just see it being a pretty dull draw.
Just a little friendly game.
Yeah, basically 1. I'm going for 1 against Newcastle.
Man United at home.
3.
Yeah,
I think we
3.
beat them.
Yeah.
And
Depends-
wherever the
wholly
Man City
depends-
at home gets inserted as well, wherever that gets put in. Nada.
I mean,
Hell.
it probably. I mean, I think the Villa and the Man United games will, because we just, like you said, Josh, we don't know where these teams are going to be, right? Like that Man United game, if they're like wholly, they're not going to get 4th or 5th or whatever. I think it depends what those two teams, how those two teams are looking by the time we play them.
I
Similar
make
to
that
Villa.
about 14, by the way, just adding it up in my head. So
Yeah,
not-
so
not
that's
far off
15.
what you said.
Yeah, that's be about right. I'd take
Where-
that. If you offered me 15 points now for those last 10 games, I'm taking them.
Where
Got
does
some
where does
56.
where does 56 points put you last year or the year before? Do we know? Let's have a look. Filtered by season.
56 puts us 10th last
year.
It puts
Seventh.
7th the year before that.
So
And it
probably
puts
7th. So
us
we'll be in and so 56 probably gets us in and around the
7th,
conversation for
10th.
8th, probably.
Between
Like, we
7th
wouldn't
and 10th, basically, seems to be the
Yeah,
consensus
which is
over the last
probably
4 or 5.
which would probably be where would be a fair finish, right? It's probably like where we should finish.
I think it'd be a tremendous finish first season in Europe, getting into the knockouts
And basically like having
finishing
so
in the
many
top
injuries.
10.
But yeah, I
yeah.
mean, if you're offering me 15 points from those last 10 games, I'm just not playing them. I'm just taking we're taking the 15 and just putting our feet up. Like I don't think you cannot make. I don't think looking at those fixtures, I don't think you can realistically make a case. I think there's a couple of those games where we're potentially being a bit generous, going 3 at home to both Chelsea and Man United. But I don't think you can make a realistic case for getting many more than 15, even if you're being like properly glass full, right? I don't think you can really get many more than 15.
Oh yeah, I'll be honest. I think 15 is quite generous.
Yeah, I think so.
We've not accounted for a slip up in the 15 realistically, but we've
And
also
you've
not
got
accounted for
at least one more like 6 goal battering as well.
No, that's the Villa. I've put that as the Villa home game. That's the one I've put in for that. So yeah, I mean, I think, and again, it depends. We need what West Ham are going to do, as you say. If Fulham decide to win every game between now and the end of the season, I don't know. But yeah, I think we'll be in and around the conversation. But as you say, Josh, I mean, I'm not going to sit there at the end of the season and go, I'm gutted that we didn't finish top 8 because, so many injuries, first season in Europe, right? If everybody's fit and we're better, we win more games of football and we finish top 4, right? So,
it's really confusing as to how this like melee in these positions will play out, because every single one of the sides in this grouping between, really even like 5th down to 12th have all just beaten and lost to one another randomly.
Yeah.
There's no sort of like consistency as to, okay, well, yeah, this team will beat this team. Like we've lost to Fulham and then Fulham have turned around and beaten Spurs, but lost to Wolves, and Wolves lost to Newcastle 3-0. You're like, there's something weird going on here. So like our predictions could be way
yeah. I mean, we hit 4. We scored 4 past Tottenham at home and then conceded 3 away to Fulham, and you just go, what is going on? I mean, we've not beaten West Ham in either game. I mean, how West Ham, considering that 0-0 against West Ham. Like that West Ham home performance from them, I know we talked about it's genuinely one of the worst. It's one of the worst performances I've ever seen from a Premier League team at home, especially, and yet they are, still in and around the conversation, which is nuts. So I'm with you. It's like it's wildly difficult to predict. I mean, the only thing we do know is that we were certainly in that pattern of being better against the better teams than we have been against some of the more on paper easier to beat teams. So you can make a case for the fact that we're playing, largely teams either around us or above us. You can make a case for saying that will go better for us than if we had a run in of, Burnley, Palace, Sheffield United.
No,
what on
give me
paper would
Sheffield
be-
United any day, and I'll play Sheffield United every day. I feel like we've sort of subverted that whole thing lately. Like we've been beating the sides we should beat, bar Luton, and losing to the sides we sort of should lose to. And I think that's been the slightly disappointing thing of the last few months is we've not done any surprises. We've not pulled off any of those surprise results. At least I'm sure there's been a couple, but not that stand out to me like it felt like we did last year, the year before. So
We've
we're
done the
always
reverse
good for
this year.
something random.
Yeah, I mean, we've
Here's
done the
a-
reverse.
Do you want to hear
this
an
year, which is
unbelievable
like-
stat?
Yeah, give us a stat.
This is an unbelievable stat. Talking about playing Sheffield United all day, every day. Like this is the example. We scored 10 goals at Bramall Lane this season. Sheffield United have scored 12 the entire season.
I think there's a similar statistic about wins in the Cleveland Browns Stadium that like Steelers quarterbacks have more or something horrendous. Yeah, it's about as bad as it gets. Yeah. What do you think in terms of some of the faces that we'll start to see at the end of the season? Because I think we'll see a lot more in CISO, which will be nice as he starts to find his
a lot
form.
more.
What do you think about Barco? Yeah, how much do you think we'll see of him?
I mean, the first opinion keeps this up pretty soon.
Yeah.
Are we going to play him left back? I guess if we're really pushed up and he's basically playing far up, but it feels like he can sort of play sort of anywhere.
I mean, they played him at left wing against Wolves, didn't they? But
Yeah,
we were also going all out for a win. So like it's hard to know because that was a cup game, no stakes, first game in, throw him out on an attacking format and just try and get us a goal. And to be his credit, he very nearly did.
I know. I mean, I've seen people go, well, he can play central midfield, he can be anywhere. But I mean, to be honest, if he can cross a ball like that, then the only place we want him is out wide, right? I don't want him faffing around in central midfield if he's got a wand of a left foot like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think it wholly depends how it's going, right? Like if we are performing really well, we're picking up points and we've got a real shot at finishing in those European places. I can't see De Zerbi ironically say not tinkering too much, but I can't see him flinging in too many unknowns if everyone's fit. If we lose, if we basically get no wins in the next 4 games and we are drifting out of the European conversation, then I can see him potentially having a bit more surprises. But then again, depends who's going to be the manager next year. Like if he's looking towards the exit door, he's not going to be wanting potential other clubs to be looking at him, stinking out the division for the last 10 games of the season as well. So there's all sorts of factors at play.
I think the season hinges at this point on João Pedro for me, just because we know what Danny Welbeck is, and as we've seen, like capable of the sublime and very capable of the ridiculous. João Pedro has been the guy this season when fit. He has been the goal machine. He's been the reliable source of making stuff happen. Now, hopefully, he comes back and finds his form, because we cannot rely on Evan Ferguson or Ansu Fati. We just cannot at this point. We've seen enough at this point from both of them over the course of the last 4 or 5 months, where you basically just have to go, it's not working. Like you can come in and rest some legs and things like that for some other players, but I do not feel confident now if we play a game and Evan Ferguson is starting up top. And the same if I see Ansu Fati, that's great, but I better see a João Pedro there and a Dinger on the other side, because I know he's not going to be able to do it himself. And that to me just tells you how important it's going to be with João Pedro coming back.
Yeah.
I agree.
Does anyone else
get
player? Like if you were voting for player of the season now, is it anyone other than a 2-horse race between Van Hecker and João Pedro?
Pascal Gross.
Yeah, Gross has to be there too. But it is those 3. I think so. Even with Pedro out for like a month and a half, 2 months,
he's
thing,
like, right?
He's still the front runner.
He would still be the front runner. Like I'm still voting for him.
I think also another player that I think is going to be really important in this run-in, and even more so given who we're playing, it's going to be the final 10-game run-in breakout of Carlos Baleba, if it does or doesn't happen.
We want to see more
Because
Baleba.
every time he's come on lately, he's looked less and less prone to mistakes and more in tune with the speed and pace of the game. And
I keep
we
saying
all accepted we didn't. I think we all accepted we didn't see that at the start of the season. And I think every time you see him now, you can see that he's more and more comfortable in that position. And people talk about his ability to, like, his replacement for Caicedo, but like watching that absolute mess of a game yesterday for Spurs, like one of the only good standouts in that football team was Bissouma. And he just looks more and more like Bissouma by the game for me. Like his attacking ability is just already leaps and bounds above Caicedo's. Like he's so willing to carry that football forward. I think that we're looking at, if he continues to grow and break out, like we're looking much more at Bissouma than a Caicedo, I think. And that's not bad.
Great. I've said it a few times. It's a very similar trajectory to Bissouma, which is he came in, looking incredibly raw at the beginning and not really being able to fit into a system that, let's be honest, was less complicated than the system that we play now. So it's not wholly unreasonable for a guy that had only played maybe 20 games for Lille, if that, to come in and take a while to learn.
Not even that, I don't think.
An unbelievably complicated system. Yeah, I've got high hopes for him. Got very high hopes for him.
He's really fun to watch too, isn't he? Sorry, Adam.
Yeah.
But just he's a laugh. Just the way that he's able to just be everywhere, and just how, again, we talked about a combative or dynamic and all of this stuff that we used to attribute to Bissouma. Like you're right, it's a like for like, right? This isn't someone breaking up the play. This is someone bursting forward with the ball and putting progressive passes forward. So, but yeah, sorry, Adam, go on.
No, I mean, with all due respect to the Moders and Milners and Lallanas of the world, and even lobbing Van Hecker into that role for a game, I want to see Baleba play over all of those guys in that position, and it's not particularly close. But in positive news, as we record, Anthony has just scored with his right foot to equalise in the FA Cup against Liverpool. So if we've now seen anything that shows incredibly overrated, expensive players that have shown absolutely no form throughout the season can come through and score important goals, maybe Ansu Fati will rise as a phoenix from the flames at the Amex and come in with a bag of goals.
I feel like you're not going to be exchanging Christmas cards with each other this year, and that seems like a shame.
160 grand a week.
I'm going to say the final point.
Wrap up on.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I was going to say, you bring up Moda. I'm rapidly getting towards the opinion where if De Zerbi is staying, I don't see a long-term pathway for Moda here. He kind of falls in between the cracks in terms of midfielders that De Zerbi seems to like. So he's another one. If you talk about wage budget to be freed up, it's really difficult. I can't see it. I like him.
So sure
I like him as a player, but I can't see where he fits in.
I think he might become quite important in the summer.
Especially if Lallana hangs up his boots. I think that's sort of it's where you play Lallana right now, irrespective of whether you think he should play there or not. That is where I would like Moda to play.
And he's so influential. And I think that he's just come back from a brutal injury and he's came back mid-season. There's no real, this isn't real, for him or anyone else, right? This is a get your feet under you and see what you can and can't do in this team for the next however long. And he's already said that he's still learning the system, right? And realistically, he's been in the system for less time than Carlos Baleba, right? He has been in this system for less time than any other midfielder in the football team because he only came back at Christmas. So I think for me, I'm not saying his career at the Albion is going to flourish and be the best thing since sliced bread. He may end up moving out on loan come the end of the summer. I don't know. And also, again, depends on the manager. But I think there is a lot to be said that come the summer, I think that with a full preseason under him as part of that midfield group that knows as much as anybody else at that point as a central midfielder what's there, I think there's stuff that could happen there. And we're not even talking about the fact that we are actively shopping for another centre midfielder. Like, we even did it in January. Like, I would be stunned if we didn't bring another player in. If Lallana is going and Milner is also retiring, that still frees up another spot that's needed and will probably be filled by an outside source. And De Zerbi's been very vocal about the fact that he wants a ready-to-start world-class midfielder coming in, right? So, like,
don't we all, Roberto?
if there's a place that we're going to be going for, I think it's probably there as our first port of call with whatever money we have.
At what point are we starting the Locatelli? Are we banging the Locatelli drum early this year? Are we trying to?
Yeah, I was already
back.
sneakily leading into it as my final sign off on today's podcast, but you beat me to it. Yeah, like that midfielder is Locatelli. Like,
I'm surprised there hasn't been more Undav chat, to be honest. I'm not writing off Moda. The last player we wrote off was Van Hecker. So, this all signs pointing to an amazing remainder of the season.
It's reverse psychology. That's it. It's just write somebody. But by that logic, Ansu Fati should have scored like 10 in his last.
Well, it's not quite working. That's why I've ramped it up lately, because it's historically it's been great. Solly March, like Van Hecker, there's been quite a few, and they've Ansu Fati seems to be actually getting worse though, which is it's not doing the intended outcome.
All right, let's wrap there, fellas. We will be back in like 2 weeks because we've got Liverpool in a couple of weeks' time over the Easter break. So we'll be recording post Liverpool. So enjoy your time off, everybody, from Albion stress. You've just got a couple of shitty England friendlies to worry about. So really nothing at all going on.
Is Lewis Dunk in the squad? I haven't even paid that
He is. We played Belgium and Brazil in friendlies though, so it really means absolutely nothing.
Ben White died, so Lewis Dunk could live.
Basically.
Seems like it.
Decided he couldn't be bothered.
All right, boys. So we will be back in 2 weeks' time, and have a good one.
Cheers.
Cheers.